Hello, everybody, and welcome to 20 Steps to Build a Tiny House by Uber Tiny School. My name is Samuel Comerford, and I'm going to be taking you on this presentation on how to DIY your very own tiny house and save 30 to 50%. So there's a lot of money that can be saved by building your own home, as you can imagine, and we're going to go through all the reasons why you're going to save so much. But we're also going to get us stuck into a lot of the content into exactly how that you can DIY your own tiny house and the different methods that we teach here. And then you could get a good understanding of what's involved and if it's something that you are potentially interested in doing. So let's get stuck into some of the content here. So there's four main different methods here that we can DIY our tiny house with, and we're going to teach you. One's with a timber frame, steel frame, SIP panel frame, and then as a project manager. So timber frame is very popular. It's kind of the original way to build any kind of house, including a tiny house. But steel frames now become the newest popular version just because it's more lightweight and we're dealing with weight restrictions. And then we have SIP panel frame, which is also really lightweight but doesn't have some of the issues steel frame has. But it's a bit of a lesser known method, but we're going to go through some exactly how to build with them. And then we have a project manager. So we're going to show you how you can actually DIY your own tiny house without even picking up any tools, just by organizing the tradespeople. And you're still going to save at least 20, more like up to 30%. So you don't even have to pick up any tools. So this school can help anyone, young and old, and handy with the tools and not, depending on what you're capable of doing, and still can save you a significant amount. So as I mentioned, you can save 30 to 50% off your build. You can see from this pie graph here kind of exactly how that works. So roughly when you're building a home, 50% of the cost is in materials. You're going to pay 25% in labor. 20% most builders charge as a minimum profit, and then you got overheads 5%. So that's as a professional builder, like I run my professional business, Uber Tiny Homes. This is what we have to do. So if you're going to DIY, you're going to save the labor and you're going to save the profit that you have to pay. That alone is 45%, and your overheads actually wouldn't be as much as what mine would be with all my different insurances I have to pay. A lot of people are renting out warehouses, etc. So you can save quite a substantial amount. So get comfortable. This presentation, it's probably going to last about an hour and 15 minutes, I think. There's a lot of information here, and I want to try and get through it to give you a good idea if this is something that you're going to be interested in. So stick around, be patient, but I'm going to also give you a lot of really good information that you can then use to DIY your homes. Even if you don't want to join our school, there's going to be a lot of good free information here. And I really want to give you, the idea of this webinar is to give you like a good broad view of all the different methods of timber, steel, SIP panel, project manager, to give a broad view of each, to then really make up your mind which one you might want to do, as opposed to going really deep into one method. Okay, so first of all, we're going to look at some of our previous clients that have done this course already. This is Cherie from the Sunshine Coast, Australia. And you can see that she done our course and she was really happy with the result, and she's now finished her home. So let's take a little look at the home that she built. This is it here, the finished product. It was actually a custom design. I also custom designed her home. I thought it was very much based off one of our designs called La Familia. It's a 3-bedroom plus study tiny home. So it's probably one of our most kind of technical builds. It's got the most intense internal fit out because you've got to fit in so many rooms in such a small space. But the build turned out really amazing with the school. So what the school really does is it just lessens the learning curve so much so that your first build's going to turn out something quite epic. You're not going to have all these big mistakes that you have to learn from and do well on the next. So she also had a carpenter named Rime, and he done the course as well. So he was actually building their house, and this is what he had to say about it. So he had a lot of the skills necessary to build the home, but he didn't have all that information relating to tiny houses because there's a bit of a difference between the residential industry as a carpenter and tiny houses. So this course really filled in that gap for him. So he was able to build this home. Look how beautiful this home turned out. This is the first tiny home. Absolutely amazing. There was not too many dramas at all that come up in this build. So that is a real testament that this school really helped. Beautiful tiny house. Okay, so where it all started. I built my first tiny home in 2015. So I was working as a carpenter. I'm a qualified carpenter, and I was just in the residential industry building homes, and I happened to come across tiny houses. Though actually back then there was very, very few in Australia. There was a big movement in America, and I saw what they were doing. So I was really inspired and built my first home. It was, and like a lot of other carpenters, you think, well, it's just like a home but small. And in a lot of ways, yes, but actually there's a lot of information that's specific to tiny houses because they have some unique challenges compared to the residential industry. They have to be stronger and lighter because it's getting towed down the road. It's like being in a cyclone, but also it's got to be stronger that it doesn't fall apart. And there's many other like little tips and tricks and just the ergonomics of living in a small space. It was still quite a big learning curve that I had to go through in order to build that home. And I learned so much off that. But I also made a lot of mistakes that I thought, wow, I'm never doing that in my next house. That was a mistake, big error. So that happened actually over a few tiny houses, quite a few. So I kept refining the system, trying to come up with the best system possible. Now, I will say I did actually do a lot of my time as a residential carpenter with really old carpenters that were almost retired, and they taught me a lot of their tips and tricks. So a lot of the information that I put into the school and that I've put into building tiny houses come from them old guys. I'm passing on their knowledge. So it's really just like a passing on the torch. They've given me so much knowledge that I then pass into the school and show you how to build an awesome tiny house. So once I built my first tiny house, I then got an order for another one and another one. It kind of snowballed and I ended up starting my construction business called Uber Tiny Homes. And no way are we related to Uber Eats or Uber Travel. It's just that was the name that ended up getting made at the time. So this was actually my very first tiny home. It was cute. It was kind of like I was going for a little Japanese tea house look, and it wasn't bad. It wasn't bad. I learned a lot, but yeah, I could have done a lot better. Uber Tiny School is the online school that I then end up making in the end of 2020. And I basically built a tiny home made from timber, made from steel, made from SIP panels from start to finish. And every step of the way, I recorded it. I explained what was going on as if somebody that was not a tradesperson could follow along. So that's the online school. Now, also, I design houses for people worldwide, including USA, America, Asia, everywhere. So I'm kind of just got a foot in the door in every aspect of tiny houses, from the design to the construction to the delivery, every aspect, basically innovation, coming up with new ideas. So I've learned a lot of knowledge of over the years to do with tiny houses. So kind of there's not any facet of tiny houses that I couldn't help you with, and that I don't really put that information into our online school. So let's start with a timber frame. That's the OG method of building a tiny house. Timber frame. So some of the pros and cons. It's a renewable resource, not bad for the environment. You can constantly grow timber. There's no issues there. It's actually easy to work with, to cut, nail together. It's easy. It's malleable. You don't have to grind anything. It's quite easy to work with. Has good thermal properties. Very important. We're going to talk about that a bit later. It doesn't get too hot or too cold on thermal bridge. Readily available in most circumstances. Price is actually usually pretty good compared to some of the other methods like steel and SIP panels. Timber, to put up your timber frame, is actually usually quite cheap. And flexibility. So if you make errors or you need to make adjustments, it's quite easy to work with. You're not trying to grind anything. And in some circumstances, you can't even make changes with steel and SIP panels. It's once you're done, you're done. The cons. Now, there's not that many cons actually with timber. There's only really, I would say, there's one main reason that a lot of the industry is not using timber as much, and that's the weight. So we're all dealing with weight restrictions with tiny homes. So if you can build lighter, you can build bigger. So that's a big thing. Everyone wants a bigger home. Of course you do, because there's such small spaces. So if you find a lot of good materials, you can keep under your weight rating with a bigger home. So that's basically the only reason I feel that people moved away from timber. The people that have moved away, not everyone, it's still quite a lot of people building with timber. The other con would be termites. Of course, termites can eat your frame, but being on a trailer, you can easily spot the mud tunnels coming up to make their way into your house. So that also makes it a lot better and easier to spot if termites do come in. Okay, let's move on. So we're going to go through the 20 steps here of building a timber frame tiny home. So I want you to have a look at these steps. And then once we go through all them steps, we're going to take another look, and you're going to really see how when you break the steps down of building a home into micro steps, when you have micro steps, you only need micro skills. And then the whole process is so much easier. It can all seem so complex building, because when you see the finished product, you're like, where do I start? How do you do that? It looks so beautiful and seamless. I'm not an artisan or craftsman. I couldn't do that. But the secret to it all is breaking it down in small steps, having a clear system in place and following that system. And then you can end up with a really good product, and it really is not that hard. Building is more about knowledge than it is to do with skill. I want to make that clear. It's more to do with knowledge than it is to do with skill, especially the building system that I've developed and I teach. It doesn't require artisan skill. Okay, first step, we're going to buy plans. So you can either get pre-made plans, custom design your home, or draw them yourself. So pre-made plans, you could buy off any tiny home builder that sells their designs and sells plans. My business does sell plans. Other businesses out there do. So you can simply buy the plan, boom, you're done. So that's an easy option. The other option is to custom design your home. So you could use an architect, or you could use another tiny house builder that does custom design homes. I myself also custom design homes, and I could make you a plan. And that way you can really get your home perfectly suited to you. Because they're small spaces, you really need it to suit your lifestyle exactly, because you can't like rearrange furniture to suit your lifestyle. That's why custom designing can be quite popular. So that's the other option. And then if you're any good at any kind of 3D modeling software, like SketchUp is what I use, you could design your own home. And then you can just send that design to like an architect, and they can make the 2D construction plans for you. Because you normally design in 3D, but you build from 2D. So this is a little bit about the custom design process. First, you get a 3D model drawn. That's what it looks like in SketchUp there on the top right. Then that gets turned into 2D construction plans. That's normally what the builder will build from. And then you can also get realistic renders if you like to really show the aesthetics of what the build is that you want, with the right color schemes and materials. All right, tiny house trailer. Let's take a look at that. So tiny house trailers, there's been a lot of changes here in Australia, I will say, to how tiny house trailers can be obtained now, especially if you're going to DIY it. You now have to, pretty much the best way is to buy your trailer from somebody who's already got a tiny house trailer design, certified, engineered, and we now have to log all our trailer designs on a government website, so they can just make sure that there's good quality controls. If someone pulls over your road your trailer on the road, they can look it up on the government database and make sure it's all been built correctly. They are the new rules that have now come into Australia just this year in July. Otherwise, anyone around the world watching this, you could maybe don't have them same rules. We also supply like a tiny house trailer design brief here that goes over exactly how we build our trailers. We like to build flat top trailers with really small wheels, 13-inch wheels that are rated to really like 900 kilograms each, so that we can have the trailer as low as possible. So that means we can build as high as we can. And I don't really like having wheel arches that we have to build around. Kind of limits your design too much. So that's what we do. But included is this trailer design document in our school that really shows you exactly how we build our trailers. Okay, construct wall frames. So this is something people get really overwhelmed with when they see a wall frame built and stood. It looks really confusing and quite complex. This is one of them perfect examples where when you break it down into small steps, it's really not that hard at all. So that is the first step when you're going to build your tiny home. So you've got your trailer on site, you've set up your trailer, you've got a level platform. Now we're going to go through and we're going to start constructing our wall frames on the ground, and eventually we'll be putting them on the trailer. But it's important that this is done correctly. It is the skeleton of your home. It's going to be the structure that holds it all together. Then we're going to erect our wall frame. So you want to build your wall frames in manageable sizes so that two or three people can then erect them and stand them on the trailer. And that's what we've done right there. You can see we've stood them up and we put braces going down onto the ground. Usually we start from a corner and work our way back. And yeah, you don't want to build the walls too heavy that it's too heavy to lift up. So, I mean, you just build them over the length of that build, which is quite a long, it's like a 9.6 meter build. You could break them walls up into 2, maybe 3 segments so you can easily lift them up. Frame tie down. So tying your frame to your trailer is very important, obviously for very important reasons, that when you move your house, you don't want it to come off the trailer. That's very obvious, but also you don't want it to really move at all because it can create cracks in whatever your lining is, and you just want it to be really connected down really well. So this is something I've seen a lot of DIYs probably not do very well, and we have a really good system using threaded rod in combination with how we tell you guys how to make your timber wall frame, making sure that all the studs are really connected to the bottom and top plate really well. There's lots of strapping in the right places. That kind of works together, the way the wall frames are built and the threaded rods, and they'll really pull it down tight and connect it to the trailer. All right, now we want to throw we've got the frame up, we've framed up the roof as well. Now we're going to throw on our roof because, I mean, we've put the timber roof on, but now we want to throw on the actual roof sheets and get all that done. So if you're building outside like we are here, and most people would be building outside, we like to put the roof on as quickly as possible, basically, and get it all wrapped up so that weather is no longer affecting the timber. You don't want it getting too wet for too long. It's really not good. The timber will absorb the moisture, and it can start to get a little bit moldy over time. So you really want to get that lid on the building as quick as possible. So for our fascia gutter roofing flashing, we're using a light gauge steel. It's very common in the construction industry. It's readily available. You can normally order it from a plumbing store or sometimes directly from the manufacturer. And it usually is about a 2 or 3 day turnaround. So you order it and within 2 or 3 days, it's already delivered. So they're normally very, very quick. So it's not something you have to like order way ahead of time. I like to have the building up, then I can measure things more precisely and then put in my order. We're going to come down and install our windows and doors. So installing your windows and doors is something you really want to, once you've put your frame and everything up, if you're building outside, sometimes your trailer can sink a little bit. So you want to kind of re-level it up throughout the build, especially once you've just done all this stage right before windows, because you've just put a lot of weight on the trailer. But then when you are installing your windows and doors, you want to be checking that it's parallel off the ground as well as level. So if your house did sink a bit and then you put all your windows and doors in with a level, you could be putting them in incorrect. So always check parallel as well as use your level. I always like to use awning style windows and doors so that if it rains and you're not home, rain's not going to come rushing in your home, because tiny houses don't have big eaves overhanging the building like residential homes do. We can't, because we've got dimension restrictions. So awning style windows are really good for that. And then you've got actually a few different types of frames that you can make. Aluminium's really popular. It'd be the most popular frame, but you can make timber. It's a lot more heavy and costs a bit more. And you can get PVC, which is kind of similar to aluminium, but doesn't have as much thermal bridging. People that are really into like a bit more into the building science, like passive house types knowledge, would probably be opting for PVC because it doesn't thermal bridge as much, which then can create condensation on the inside of your window. Vapor barrier. This is a very important thing for a timber frame tiny home because we want to make sure our house is breathing. Now, believe it or not, your house walls breathe vapor. Now, vapor is like water, but in a gas form. So it can actually, should be able to pass through your walls from the outside in and from the inside out. So if you're using a non-vapor permeable barrier, that's that blue barrier you see on the outside of the building, water, say, from the vapor from the outside will try and come through, but wouldn't be able to come into your house. You might think that's a good thing, but actually it's not. Because then there's a lot of vapor from the inside of your home, just from you breathing, you cooking in the kitchen, showers, etc. That wants to pass through as well. But that's going to come through into your wall cavity, hit your lining, and then condensate in your wall, and then possibly get insulation wet, and then build up moisture in your wall cavity, which then can create mold and microtoxins in your home. So it's actually really important you have a really good barrier. And there's definitely different qualities that you can use. The one that I'm picturing here and I recommend is called Pro Clima, a really popular brand. It's much higher quality than the standard one that's in your hardware store. It's a really big subject to talk about, especially the building science that we don't have time to get in here. But let's just remember the 4 Ds, and this applies to your vapor barrier system and your cladding system. And that's deflection, drainage, drying, durability. So we're trying to stop weather coming in. So we've got 2 things. We've got vapor and we've got actual water molecules. So first thing is to deflect. That's what your outside cladding does, 90% of. But then if anything gets behind your cladding, you don't want it to go straight in your home. That's where it would hit the vapor barrier and it will just drain away. So if you have a little bit of a cavity there, like with battens in between your cladding and your vapor barrier, it can drain away. And also it can dry. If you've got a cavity there, it's much quicker for that area to dry out. Then all the materials you're using, the batten, the cladding, the vapor barrier, needs to be durable so that it's not going to break down and start to fail over time from getting wet. And now we're going to talk about the external cladding, which was part of that 4 Ds there. You can see that the external cladding is going to deflect 90% of all water that hits it, but actually vapor technically should be able to pass through it, or if there's a cavity between the vapor barrier and the cladding, the vapor can come through the wall frame and then escape out the cavity at the top and bottom, usually the bottom of the cladding. But there's many different claddings to choose from, many different aesthetics you can go for. A big aspect with cladding with tiny houses is actually weight, because some cladding are a lot more heavy than others. And this is why you see a lot of people use corrugated iron roofing stuff for their cladding, which can look quite a bit cheap in my opinion. You've got to try and do it. I like to use more architectural grade metal siding in combination with, say, timber or some other kind of cladding like pictured here. It's like a WeatherTex type cladding. But weight's a big issue, and that's something you must factor in when you're choosing your cladding for your home. Okay, now we're going to install, and again, these slides that you're seeing here, this is actually from the online school of me recording every step building a timber frame home. So this is the actual house that we build when we recorded every step. Now we're installing a tongue and groove floor. Now, because we're installing a tongue and groove floor, we installed it after the outside of the building was finished, and now we come in and install it. A lot of people would normally put down their subfloor, and we do as well, and then put our wall frames on top of the subfloor. And so it's a different system. It's a different way of doing it. But because we're doing tongue and groove flooring, it's very, very sensitive to moisture that it can't be put on first. Because normally you're going to put your subfloor down first, put your wall frames on top. but then you're not using tongue and groove flooring, I should have mentioned, sorry. You're going to lay like vinyl planks or some other kind of flooring that's non-structural, cork. There's quite a few different options, floating floor. But when you're actually using real timber tongue and groove floor, you can't lay it first and put your wall frames on top because it's really sensitive to moisture. And yeah, so it's a much better idea to do it now. So with your flooring, it's really good. You want to stop thermal bridging from the trailer coming up. So you want to have a thermal break of some sort. XPS foam can be really good, as well as using a batten. The tongue and groove flooring that you do install should have the right moisture content so it doesn't expand and contract too much. And you're going to need expansion joints once you go over about 6 meters in length. So we go over in detail how to install a tongue and groove floor. Now we're going to install all our services rough-in. So this is something I use licensed tradesmen for. I don't try and do my electrical. I don't try and do my plumbing myself. I get licensed electricians and plumbers to come in and do that work for you. Although there is some differences between the residential and construction industry that you do need to talk to your plumber electrician about, and that I explain in the school. But most of the information is very similar to residential construction. It's just a few things that they need to be careful not to do. For instance, don't weaken the studs. Our external studs need to be kept strong. They can't just drill all their holes through the studs and run all their wires and pipes. I don't let them do that at all. I make them run their things vertical and come down at the right spot. There's a few tips and tricks that we go over on how to instruct your plumber and electrician. Okay, now we're going to install and insulate the ceiling. So we like to do this first before any lofts are put up, because the lofts make it really awkward to put your ceiling up. But we can put scaffolding in now when it's an empty shell, and we can easily work and do our ceiling. So first you're going to insulate it, and we only insulate it once the electrician's done, because he's going to run some wires up there. And then we're going to put our ceiling up. So we're actually doing a ply ceiling with a shadow line gap. It's something we like to do in some of our houses with our particular color scheme. And then we have it in that shadow line gap, we put LED strip lights. It looks really beautiful. I might have had a picture there. No, I don't have a picture of the LED strip light, but it looks really nice. So we show you exactly how to install that ceiling. And we do show you how to install a VJ ceiling as well, I think. We've done it on some of our other builds. Yeah. Now, talk about the insulation itself for the walls and the roof. There's actually a lot of science behind insulation, and there's different ways to do it. We like to use bats, and this is another thing that needs to be vapor permeable. And this is another thing that can some perform a lot better than others. And one way that they perform, and that's commonly referred to, is something called the R rating. And you'll see that they all have an R rating like 1.5, 2.0. And that is going to give you a bit of an indication of how good the insulation works. I have seen scientific breakdowns where it's kind of saying there's actually a bit more to it, but basically that's the information they're giving us. So that's all you can really go off. Now, I think the best insulation out there is something called wood fiber insulation, and it has a really good R rating. But the problem is the really high R rating stuff, and that performs really well thermally, it's really heavy. That's kind of how it performs well. And we're dealing with tiny houses that have weight restrictions. So we don't really want the best performing stuff, because it's going to weigh too much. And then if you're using other stuff that's really light but not vapor permeable, say like foam, now the vapor is going to go in and get trapped inside your wall cavity. So that's why I use vapor permeable bats and kind of mid-range stuff. It still performs in the middle of the range. It's not too heavy, but it still does a decent job. So yeah. Now we're going to build our lofts and walkways. So walkways, like you can see there, where you can actually stand upstairs and walk beside the loft, has become a really popular thing with tiny houses now, a really popular design element, and it is really good. You do sacrifice that downstairs. There's going to be a drop down section, which usually is sometimes, depending on your height, it would obstruct your head height. So you've got to have your design compatible with that walkway. But even still, there's really good designs, and we have designed a lot ourselves, where a walkway just works really, really well. On top of that, you can also build your actual lofts themselves. We sometimes build with exposed loft members. So from underneath the loft, you can see all the timber, and then you can just see what's on top, and it adds a little bit of sense of spaciousness and a really cool feature. Or you can just build your loft itself out of timber, not dressed beautiful timber, and then you just line the underside of your loft the same you would the main ceiling. Then we're going to talk about wall lining. So a really popular wall lining that I notice a lot of builders use, and we use ourselves, is MDF sheets. It's pretty easy to work with, and it really can just give you that really nice, smooth white, or just a smooth finish. Typically white, a lot of people have it. It's just nice to have that neutral color, not have to be too busy inside. And that makes it so in your house, it's quite calming to be there. And then it kind of brings the outside in through your windows when it's not too busy. So that's one really popular option. Another really popular option that's kind of, I consider the healthiest, would be pine VJ boards. So you just like usually pine boards that run horizontally, and they have a VJ clipping in system. They're vapor permeable. They're totally healthy, totally natural. It's just pine. You get them at about 10 mil thick, half an inch. That's another option. And then you have plasterboard itself. Plasterboard, like gyprock, we call it here in Australia, or sheetrock, they might call it in the US. That's another popular option, but you got to be careful. A lot of that needs to be set with a setting compound. If your house is going to move and move too much, the setting compound will crack. So something to be careful of. Screen architrave. So once you've got the lining on, now you're going to put like trim around your windows. So this is where you got to really sharpen your pencil and do some really neat work, because you have to get this pretty within a 1 or 2 mil ideally. And I have a system, and this is where I learned a really good system from them old timers that really, taught me their system on how to do it, where I think it works really easy. You can measure everything in one go and cut it all in one go and install it in one go. There's so many different methods I've seen carpenters and builders using over my years building in the residential industry that people do this. It's surprising it's such a simple task. It's got so many different methods. But the method I teach in the school, I was taught by them old timers, and I think it is definitely the most economical and easy. Okay, moving on to the cabinetry. So really important, because the cabinetry really makes or breaks your home. It's what makes that small space to be really utilized well. It's a limited amount of space, and we want to make sure we're maximizing the efficiency of it. And if we have a good cabinetry plan, it makes your home actually seem a lot cleaner, because everything has a home and can be put away. If it's not like that, it's going to be bits and bobs and sort of clutter everywhere always, and you've got nowhere to put it, so you can't really clean up properly. So that's another reason to really invest in a good cabinetry plan to make sure your tiny house is functioning at its best. So there's 3 main options of cabinetry, and we've done them all for our tiny houses, but now we stick with one option. And with that one option we actually save up to 60% of what we used to pay in Uber Tiny Homes, my tiny house business, for our cabinetry, with absolutely no loss in quality. So first of all, the first option and how we started was to use a professional. Get a professional cabinet maker to come in, measure all your cabinets, help you design it, and then he'll go away, make them, come in and install it. So absolutely amazing. There's usually not too many downsides to this. Maybe the only downside would be that if he's not familiar with tiny houses and he doesn't quite know what ergonomically would be good, but generally speaking, they do a pretty good job. The only really downside is the cost. They charge you a lot to do that. It's not a cheap service, and you will pay quite a lot of money to do that. The second option would go to one of these large hardware store chains like Bunnings, Lowe's, and they all have flat pack cabinets on the shelf that you can then just pick off, screw together, and install. That's not too hard, because screwing them together once they're in flat pack forms, not that hard. A little bit of YouTube and just having a go. You get it. It's not that hard. It's really not. But they only have set sizes of cabinetry, and they don't have unique things like this set of stairs here. They're not going to have that off the shelf. So you kind of got to design your home around the cabinetry instead of the other way around, which is really limiting, I find. So the third option that I now do, and I think is the best, because I now save 60% what I used to pay from a professional. That equals over $10,000 saving. That's including the labor and everything. And that is that there's some businesses now that you can get them to flat pack your custom design, and they'll send you all the cabinetry flat pack, and then you just screw it all together and install it in your tiny home. That's an amazing service. And the reason they do that is that now cabinet makers actually don't really make all the cabinets anymore. There's big machines and computers, and they just put in the design. They usually have a software that you have to fill in to get your flat pack, but it all goes into a big machine. Your design's on the software. They feed in just the sheets of the product, and the machine cuts it all, drills it all, flat packs it, and puts it there. That's what a lot of cabinet makers have now. Then they just simply screw it together, bring it to your home, and you think they like made it from scratch, but really they didn't even do anything. Really, they just designed it and put it in the machine. And now there's businesses that actually just offer that machinery service. They're not actually cabinet makers themselves. They don't deal with the public. Just other cabinet makers will come to them. So even a lot of the professional cabinet makers that you would employ, they actually do what I'm telling you to do now, and that's go to one of them companies that will custom design your flat pack, and then you screw it all together yourself. So that's what we now do, and we show you exactly how to do that in the online school. Okay, let's install the shower. So I like to use an acrylic or poly marble base. That's like a base on the bottom that you can literally just sit there. The fall's already in the base that goes to the waste, and the water will escape. Behind the PVC or tiles that you put on the wall, you've got to make sure you do a really good waterproofing job. We show you exactly how to do that with our waterproofing membrane, with using polyurethane sealant. You really want to do a good job here. It's very common for people to mess this up doing DIY and get leaks in your bathroom, and it costs a lot to fix. So you really want to make sure you do this correct the very first time. This isn't something you want to learn from on the first one and do correct in the next house, because it's going to cost you a lot of money. So we show you how to install the base, waterproof. We put on PVC wall lining there, and then I also show you how to install a really nice frameless glass shower screen. And a lot of the time you can buy that frameless glass shower screen as a kit with the base, so you know they're going to work together. You don't have to get it custom made. It looks amazing and really isn't that hard to put together. All right, tiny house toilets. This is another really, really popular thing with tiny houses. It's a really big, I should say not popular, but a really controversial subject, because so many people are used to just having a standard toilet where they go in there, do their business, flush it, boom, it's gone. They don't have to think about it. They don't have to deal with it. So many clients that come to me in my business are like, what are the toilet options? Like, what do we have to do? Compost toilet, what does that involve? Do I have to deal with the poop itself? Do I have to see it? Am I going to smell it? There's a lot of these sort of questions. So there's quite a few different options now. Great options, I will say. So you don't just have to have a standard toilet now, and I think it can still be really quite high functioning. So first of all, you have a standard toilet. We all know what that is. A lot of the time that can work in a tiny home. If you're parked near a septic tank, say next to someone's house, you can connect it into there and flush away. Easy. Boat toilet is very similar to a standard toilet, although they flush with a minimal amount of water. And sometimes, like in a boat, you can actually have them just go into a holding tank. So it's just like another water tank where all the waste goes into. And then you could possibly get a truck to come and empty that tank. People provide that service. Like for construction toilets, they'll suck away all your sewage. So that's another option, that you can still have a flushing toilet and you'd be like potentially off grid. Then you have an incinerator toilet. Very cool toilet I've seen come onto the market the last few years. And we have installed a couple of them in our tiny houses. And people seem to like them, even with your high amount of cost, just because it really eliminates any need to deal with the waste. It literally cooks all the waste inside the toilet. You can use them like 3 or 4 times per hour, because they kind of shut while they're getting cooked. Turns all your waste into a little bit of ash. I think it's a teaspoon of ash per use. You shouldn't be chucking that ash on the garden. So pretty cool. They just use a little bit of power or a little bit of gas. You get electric and gas versions. So obviously you have to factor that in. But besides that, very cool. Then you have a compost. Compost is a toilet that would normally have a chute that would go underneath the trailer and into a holding tank. And then you normally got to do your business, 1s and 2s in the same tank, but you can then get some wood chips or wood shavings, some sort of organic compound that you put on their waste, and that sort of helps break it all down. And of course, there'll be a 12-volt fan venting that as well to stop the smell. Then you have a waterless toilet. Now, we've installed a lot of these in our tiny houses. They are a toilet that's normally all the waste is contained within the toilet, so it doesn't have to be shooting down through the trailer into a holding tank. And they normally need to be emptied once a month with about 2 people in a tiny house. So generally, it's the 1s and 2s have to get diverted in them toilets because otherwise it will smell if the 1s and 2s come together, because you're not putting any organic compound on the 1s and 2s. It just goes basically into a bucket. The 1s goes into another part of the toilet that goes underneath the house into another bucket. And once a month, you've got to lift the lid, tie the bag, pull the bucket out, put it outside, and there's a rotation of buckets that goes through. So you do have to come face to face with the waste. It's not that bad. It really isn't. They don't smell. They have a 12-volt fan. There's no smell in your home, and they're quite cost effective. So we've been using them quite a bit, and our customer feedback has actually been pretty good. Then moving your tiny house. So you've basically got 2 options here. You can either tow it. We recommend to use a professional. They're not really designed tiny houses to be towed around like RV caravans. We're building them like miniature houses with a lot more weight and luxuries inside. Moving them around all the time would be quite stressful. So you can tow it if you've built it to the right specs, or you can put it on a super low loader. That's what you can see pictured there. That takes away a bit of the stress of the home because it's not getting pulled down the highway. I like to do that if it's going for a lot longer distance. I put them on a super low loader, and that is fully insured as well. I think it's just a little bit safer, but of course you can get them towed as well. So here's a little bit about the process of building. Once you see, and I hope you see, once you break it down in each step, you start from this, then you do this, then you do this, then you do this, you end up with a really beautiful. And it wasn't about skill, it's more about knowledge. There's a little bit of skill, but when you break it down into each step, it's like, how much skill do I need to perform that one little step? It's not a lot. And then you move on to the next step, and then there's another small amount of skill needed to do that step. So that's why building is first and foremost about forethought, knowing all the steps that need to be taken and performing them in the correct order. And that's why I made this school, to help people save so much cost in their tiny house for the DIY person. And I truly believe, and not only do I believe, I now have proof with my previous clients, people can DIY their own tiny house, save a lot of money, and come up with really awesome builds. This is the build that we built, the timber frame one, in the online school. So we have videos of every step building this particular home. It's a design we have we sell for our clients called Petara, beautiful double loft tiny home. We happen to use this really nice sort of Scandinavian ply look with a black Sjausugge barn looking outside, quite nice aesthetics in the school. This was the house we built. Okay, so now you can see the 20 sort of main steps. I will say this is the 20 main steps. There's a few more littler steps involved, but this is the 20 main steps. So I hope that you see now that as we broke it down, everything got way more simplified, and it is now an achievable task to build your very own tiny home. Okay, thanks for staying with me this far and going at it for about 45 minutes. I'm going to try and move pretty quickly through this next few segments. But we're now going to go through steel frame, and then we're going to go through SIP panel frame, and then we're going to go through the project manager. They're not as long as that timber frame segment that we just went through, because there's a lot of similarities, but let's get stuck into it. Let's talk a little bit about the steel frame, what some of the pros and cons. So it's lightweight. It has great strength. It's prefabricated, definitely a pro. No extra bracing needed. You don't need to put brace ply on the outside. So these are some of the pros for sure. Some of the cons are thermal bridging, mold issues, corrosion, flexibility. Now, one of the biggest issues, I think, biggest cons is the thermal bridging. So thermal bridging happens when, say, if you put a bit of steel out in the sun and a bit of timber, or if you put it out at night and then you went and grabbed the steel and the timber, the steel would be a lot more hot. You'd actually burn your hand and wouldn't be able to pick it up, where the timber you could find. And at night, you'd pick up the steel, it'd be really cold. The timber would be not that cold. So that's because it can thermally bridge, hold that heat and that temperature a lot more than the timber. So it has some thermal bridging issues. So if it's really hot outside, that steel frame is going to probably get hot. If it's really cold, it's going to get cold. Now, that can be bad just for the insulation of your home, but also it can create, in certain circumstances, a scenario where your frames will actually condensate and sweat, and moisture then can get stuck in the wall cavity, which can create mold, moisture issues, and microtoxins. So this isn't something that I personally have made up or my belief. I got all this information from consulting with building biologists, because I've really done a lot of work in trying to create a healthy home that I can. So I've done a course on how to build a healthy home as like a 12-week course. I also done just private consulting with building biologists, and this is all the information they told me. So I'm not completely against steel. I teach you how to do it, but that is the issue that was most commonly brought up for me, and why I don't actually really build it so much with it now with my business. I more go for the SIP panels, which we'll talk about, has a lot of the pros, but without the cons. But let's talk about steel frame, because it's not all bad, and a lot of people do still prefer it. So the system of building a steel frame is actually all the same as the timber that you just saw. So we don't have to go through every step. We're just going to go through the very beginning, because that's the only really difference. It still has, it's a cavity frame system. So there's a frame, you have the internal wall lining, the external cladding, the insulation, the wires go through it. Everything's the same. It's just the actual members themselves are made from steel, not timber. That's all. So first of all, we're going to get our plan that we've organized, and we're going to send it to a steel frame manufacturer. So it's normally cold formed frame steel. I think I said that right. Now, you would think steel's heavier than timber, right? But actually it's really thin, light gauge steel. So it actually ends up being quite lighter. But if you send them a plan, they'll then send you a plan back that looks something like this, and they can then make all your frames based off your plan. So it's quite simple. You can pay usually an extra few $100s, and a structural engineer can go over your design and make sure that it's going to be certified. He can say where to put like cross braces in the actual wall frame themselves. That's what they like to do. Where in timber frame we put bracing ply on the outside. They don't really do that, which is good. It's less work. And then they can make the frames and deliver them on site. As you can see here in this video. So that was the steel frames on site. Then you can see here's a little video of us standing the wall frames on the trailer. So it's very easy when you get them pre-manufactured, the wall frames, and then to stand them. This whole stage of the build is by far easier than timber, because everything was pre-made. We just stood them up. They're very lightweight, very easy. Okay, so that was a little video of us installing them. This part, super easy. I agree, it's easier than timber frame. And I think that attracts a lot of DIY people, because this is like, well, that was the bit we were most scared of, and we got away with that quite easy. You can see we've actually installed a SIP panel roof on this particular build. You just install the lots like that, the walkways. You're simply just screwing it together with tech screws that they provide with the frame. So this aspect, very easy. So we basically only brought the build up to that age in steel in the school, that is. We finished that house, but we built it up to that stage in this, because everything after that, it's no different than a timber frame. And when we do sell the courses, the timber frame and steel frame come as one. So you really get all the information needed to do either option. Okay, SIP panel construction. Let's get stuck into it. We're going to go through this one pretty quickly as well, although this one is a completely different system to timber and SIP panels. It is actually the most DIY friendly method of all, I would say, and it has some really good pros. It has cons as well, but it has a lot of the pros that the steel frame has, but without the cons, particularly that thermal bridging issue I was talking to you about. So first of all, what is a SIP panel? Sometimes they're referred to as a sandwich panel. Consists of an exterior and interior lining with a foam core, usually EPS foam. The lining of the exterior and interior I like to use is metal, commonly like using cool room panels, but they're also cool rooms, I should say. But they also do have full residential homes getting built out of the metal ones as well. Otherwise, they're also very popular to see with OSB ply on the inside and outside with the foam core. And they've become they're growing in popularity in the construction industry because they save so much on labor time and efficiency. They're very quick and easy to build with. In fact, the system that I've seen getting built in Australia is from a building company called Bondor. They have a Bondor build system. They've made their own unique patented system of building. And to build a residential home using these panels, you don't even need to be a qualified carpenter, which typically you do with every other building method. You've got to be a qualified carpenter. You don't have to be a qualified tradesman at all. That's how easy it is to build with them. You just have to have done a course on how to build with these panels. So that alone there is telling you they're easy to build with. It. They've allowed them, and they've got it passed through our Australian government, which are now our Australian Building Association, which is quite strict in making sure everyone's licensed and skilled to build properly. They've got them passed that people can build residential homes with them that aren't even qualified as tradespeople. So SIP panels, let's look at some of the pros and cons of building a tiny house out of SIP panels. Cost, overall, the cost, because we save so much labor, is the cheapest between timber and steel, hands down. You're going to save quite a bit of money, at least $10,000 in Australia, possibly more. Lightweight, they have the lightweight property that steel frame has, but they don't have the thermal bridging issues. Because it's just a thin lining of metal and then foam, thermal bridging can't go through that foam. That foam diffuses any thermal bridging quite effectively. They're also much more well insulated because there's no air pockets. When you're filling in a cavity with bats, there's lots of air pockets. It doesn't get fully insulated. Plus the frame itself can have thermal bridging to pass through the frame. So they're really well insulated, DIY friendly, no thermal bridging, no mold issues. So some really good aspects with the SIP panels. Some of the cons is they can't repair as easily. Like when I say that is the inside of the SIP panel, I just paint. I don't even line it. So I'm saving the money of all the line and I just paint it. And once you paint it, it just looks like sheetrock. But if you were to dent that or cut it or put a hole in it, you kind of got to bog it and it's a bit harder to repair. So you got to be as careful. And maybe they're not as environmentally friendly as well because they're made up of metal and EPS foam. So you are doing the environment a service by building a small home, but yeah, SIP panels are not the healthiest option for the environment, I would assume. So we're going to go over the quick 20 steps on building a tiny house with SIP panels. I'm going to move quickly here because I don't want this to go on for too long, but we're going to go through the 20 steps. It's a unique system how to build with them, and we've developed this unique system, particularly for our tiny homes. We call it the Uber Build system. Firstly, we're going to stand the walls on the trailer. 2 or 3 people can normally stand them in a day, quite quick. We put timber braces going down onto the ground. The outside of the SIP panel, we line cladding, so it doesn't matter if you put screw holes into it. It all gets covered up. And all you need is a screw gun and some braces. It's just lots of screwing involved, not many tools needed. I'm going to show a little video here of us installing the roof panels on, also SIP panel roof. Very easy as well because you just need to lay them on top of the SIP panel and screw on each end, some long screws into the SIP panel once we put our metal channels on. And literally our roof will be on. That took us about 2 hours. 2 people, actually 3 people. We have 2 people lift them up and then install them. So, and now that roof's already got roof sheathing on it. It's already insulated. And on the underside, you literally can just paint that SIP panel if you want, or put cover strips on there. Typically, we will put more lining on the underside, but that's purely for aesthetics to make it really nice and warm inside, because SIP panels, we want to dress them up and make them look beautiful. We don't want it to look like a construction shed donga. And we can do that, and we show you how to dress them up beautifully, because a lot of people do build with them, but they don't build with them that nice, I'll be honest. Okay. Then we're simply going to cut out our windows and openings. So with the SIP panels, we stand all the walls, we put the roof on, only took us a couple of days, and then we get a metal cutting saw and we cut out where all our window openings will be. We put some metal channels around it, and we can install and screw our windows in. So super simple process. You don't have to put in any beams or lintels. You just got to make sure that you really make sure you measure and cut out the right size. Because if you were to cut out your window opening too big, that's going to be an issue. You're basically going to have to order another window bigger to suit that hole, because you can't fill in the panel too easily. So make sure you cut them out the right size. Then we're going to install our windows, again, making sure they're parallel, making sure they're tight to the metal angles, or we solid pack them. And we just use standard windows with SIP panels, actually, with the reveal system. You can get special windows that are kind of made, I think they're called face fix windows, that they're kind of made for SIP panels, but they have a different look. We don't like to do it. Because basically we're building with SIP panels. Once we've finished the build, when someone walks in there, we don't want them to know we've built with SIP panels. That's kind of our indicator we've done a good job. We want them to walk in there and make it feel like it feels like any other beautiful home, timber frame, steel frame, where it all just looks beautiful and the same. We don't want it to degrade in quality and all, and we do that, nobody knows. So that's why we use standard windows. Then we're going to waterproof the outside of the building. We use a bit of a mixture of membrane and polyurethane to go outside the outside, fill around all our windows, any screw holes. We make sure that that's all waterproofed, making sure no leaks come inside the home. Then we're going to bring in the electrical roughing. So I will admit, of all everything building with a SIP panel home is easier, except for the electrician. He is the one person that does have a harder job doing it in some ways, because we don't have the cavity of the wall and we don't run our wires through the wall. Some SIP panels have a system like that. We don't do that. So we have a few different methods in order to hide our wires, because we don't want to see conduit coming up the wall. Like, say we've got a light switch, you don't want to see that conduit going down to the ground. Some people do that when they build with SIP panels. Totally ugly, and we want nothing to do with that. So we conceal a lot of our wires, like we batten out some walls, we come up through the floor. Sometimes you can just batten out the outside of the wall and run it up behind your cladding. That's another really easy way to do it. But we show you in the school a variety of ways in order to conceal your electrical wires and make it look just like any other home. Then we installed our subfloor on the building. So there's a few different ways. We show you a couple of ways to do the subfloor. Some ways we put more thermal bridging between our flooring and the trailer members, and sometimes we give the client options. With the business, it's been a bit of an evolution of like, what things do we allow clients to do as an option, and what things do we just do. Now, previously, we've given them quite a lot of options where they can, and we explain to you in details, in detailed videos. Sorry, bit of a brain freeze. But basically, you try to stop. We don't want moisture in the condensation from our big trailer, metal-based trailer frame coming up into the home. And we don't want any of that heat or that cold coming up into the home. So we show you a variety of methods on how to stop that thermal bridging and stop that moisture. Then we install the ceiling. So like I said, for aesthetic reasons, with a ceiling, we don't want to just paint that. We're going to put in a timber ceiling there so it looks really nice and warm and bringing that warm element into the home. So we can show you how to install a VJ timber ceiling onto your SIP panel so it looks really nice. Then we install our timber lofts and walkways. So with my SIP panels, houses, I like to have timber lofts. Well, I like to do definitely timber walkways. Sometimes I'll actually make the loft itself SIP panel. Otherwise, I also like to do it with timber as well. It's just a lot stronger if you're trampling and standing on the SIP panels themselves. I'm a little bit weary of doing that because I don't want the SIP panel to kind of delaminate. But there's a variety of systems that I show you on how to do that. But yeah, we go through every step needed to build your timber walls and loft frames. Then we're going to put on the external cladding. Can be screwed directly to the SIP panel itself, or you can put a batten there and screw it to the battening as well. Up to you, depends on the cladding that you're using. But very simple because you're not trying to line up your cladding with studs, which you normally have to do with metal and timber frame construction. You know, you've got to make sure your cladding ends perfectly on the studs because it has to have a stud fixing. With SIP panels, you don't have all that. It makes it so much easier to do any kind of cladding. We show you timber window architraves here, and we use a plug cutter so you can really conceal all the screws and really have a really nice finish there. So we show you how to do that. Then we're going to put our wall lining on our walls. We're using MDF paneling there with a VJ groove. You actually see the actual SIP panels we get, you can get them on with the internal skin has a VJ groove as well. That's like the VJ vertical lines there. So when you paint it, it's all got vertical lines that go up in it. Kind of is a nice look. Then we put on our window architraves. Same again, like I explained in the timber frame, but we do have, there's a little bit of a difference that we nail steel into the reveal of the window, but then you've got to screw on around the outside of the window architrave because we're going into the metal angle. Then we're going to install our shower. We've been through that. Everything is exactly the same there. And then we're going to paint. So painting SIP panels is a little bit different in that you've got to paint directly. We don't line our SIP panels to save weight, save money, and it still looks great. But you got to paint directly onto the SIP panels. So that's a metal surface. So when it's a metal surface, it's already been through a roll. That's how they make it. And the roll's oiled. So you got to get the oil off the metal. So first you got to kind of wash it all with vinegar. Then you got to get some metal etching paint. Usually do 2 coats of that. And then I put 2 or 3 coats of just standard paint onto that. But I should go back. I should mention with the painting too, it is something you could really do yourself. And a lot of people feel confident to DIY it. But also, there is a lot of tips and tricks that can make it look really good if you hire a painter, especially when it comes to no more gapping. We use a lot of gaps to fill in any cracks and gaps, and that really does make a big difference in how good the quality will be at the end. So if you are going to DIY, I definitely recommend jump onto YouTube first and get a lot of them tips and tricks before you get stuck into it because it's a little bit more than you might think. Again, been through all the options previously in the timber course. It's exactly the same with a SIP panel, except you're screwing directly to a SIP panel, which is even easier. You don't have to line anything up with studs again. We just screw it into place. So there's no difference at all with this. The only thing that sometimes I do is if I'm going to run my wires, sometimes one of the tricks I have is to run our wires behind the cabinetry. So we might batten the cabinetry out a little bit and then run our wires up. That's something that you can do. Then we got bench tops. So a few very common bench tops to get is timber, solid timber, a laminate, stone, real or forks, and then stainless steel. So solid timber bench tops are probably mid-range. Then we have laminate is probably can go from low range to mid range. There's all different quality laminates. Then stone would definitely be top of the range. Even the fork stuff is usually a bit more expensive. And then stainless steel, I think is probably more, I've only done it a couple of times, probably more mid range as well, maybe a little bit higher range. But there's some really popular options for tiny houses. Again, weight can be an issue. It's something you need to consider. Then we get the plumber in. So the plumbing with a SIP panel compared to the other ones is a little bit different, but it's not too hard. So basically we get him to just to run up his plumbing up through the bottom of the trailer and into the cabinet itself, run up the inside of the cabinet and the inlet, water inlets there, all you see is 2 pipes coming up. So it's not really that bad. It doesn't affect the aesthetics. You're only going to have to open the door where you're normally going to see a waste pipe coming down anyway. You're going to see the inlet pipe. So we don't think that's a big deal at all. Very easy. It's not hard for the plumber at all. Although I will say for the shower, the one thing that we do different is we batten that off the wall so that he can run his pipes up and conceal the pipes in the wall. We don't want to see the pipes coming up for the shower. So that shower wall gets battened out, plumbing comes up, then we line it. And then that's the only thing different we do for the plumber. Then we're going to get the electrician to come in, do the fit off all the lights. You can see we're using LED strip lights there. He's going to install any appliances, power points, the main switchboard, all that stuff. We normally like to conceal that inside the cabinetry, the main switchboard that is. And normally would then get the floor laid. We like to lay the floor at the very end so that no other tradesmen are then going to walk on it and make a mess with it. So we like to have just about everything finished, and then we just go, okay, lay the floor, walk out. That's it, finished, house done. So you can see here, as opposed to laying a tongue and groove floor, we are now we laid a structural flooring substrate. We called it it's like a chipboard. It's meant for flooring. I call it yellow tongue or green tongue. And then we're laying vinyl planks on top of that. It's a non-structural flooring. Could be a floating floor, could be cork, could be many different options that we lay on top of that. Then the house is finished. So this is the house that we built. As you can see there in the course, it was the SIP panel course, and that's how it ended up finished. The end result, you don't know it's SIP panel. And we saved a lot of money. The house is quite big because it's so light. We managed to get the weight down so much by building a house this big using SIP panels. So it means you can build bigger. So I hope you get a bit of an idea now, building with SIP panels. When you break it down, again, you break it down, micro steps equals micro skills, and all this becomes so much more achievable. Okay, so that's done with SIP panels. Thanks for sticking with us so far. We're going to go through one more thing, and it's going to be quite quick. We're going for an hour now. Let's go. So DIY your tiny house as a project manager. So this would be for a lot of people that aren't handy on the tools. And there's a lot of you guys, you've got your own job. Maybe you're a woman or man. Maybe you're a bit more elderly or in your 50s, 60s. You're not going to get tools. Maybe you're just a younger person also, but you're not prepared to pick up tools. You're not confident to pick up tools, to buy tools and build your home. You can still DIY your home and save 20 to 30%. That's a lot of money. The average home now is in Australia, it's about $150,000 Australian, that is, for a decent home, tiny home. So 20 to 30% of that, we're looking at $30,000 to $45,000 you can still save. And all you got to do is organize the tradesman to build your home. So it's not that hard. And that's what this course is about. And we teach you in this course how to do that. You're basically cutting out the middleman, which is the builder. Be someone like me in my construction business. I'm organizing tradespeople to build the homes, but now I'm giving you the information here to show you how to do it, to DIY your own tiny home. But it's not as complex as I've made it quite simple. You don't need to learn all the technical stuff that I've learned, because I've make information packs that you basically just give to your tradespeople, and then they've got all the information they need. So the way I've designed this course is that it takes as much of the load off you and puts it onto the tradesman's shoulders, and you just have to supervise them. No experience needed. You don't need to have prior experience in the construction industry at all. Like I just said, the way I've designed this is to require minimal input from you and let the tradies do all the work. And there is a way. I'm going to let you know how you can do that. So firstly, though, let's have a look. How are you going to save the money? So we saw this pie graph before, and we saw that you could save all the labor, which is about 25% by building it yourself. But we're not going to save that doing this method. You're going to pay the tradespeople to build your home. But you save that profit, which is 20% at least. Most builders are 20 to 30% when they're professional builders, when they're building a tiny home. That's how much they have to run a profitable business. But then also the overheads, you can cut a bit as well. You're not hiring factories and as many employees they do to do their book work and all that. So you can scrape a bit more percentage as well. I even show you how to get your materials trade price in our online course to be a project manager. Don't quit your day job. You need to invest a little bit of time in the beginning, just getting your design sorted, finding your tradespeople. That's the time when it's going to be a little bit of work. But actually, once the job starts, it needs no more than 1 hour a day of your time to build your home. And your home will be finished in, it can vary, but if you allow 8 to 12 weeks finished, it's not getting worked on full time for that whole time, but 8 to 12 weeks, your home would be finished, job done. And you just save yourself $30,000 to $45,000 and you're doing no more than an hour a day. So it's not bad. And you're also learning a lot along the way on how everything works. You could build another one, etc. And now the industry is already set up for DIY people. And what I mean by that is everyone you need, the tradespeople to build your home, they subcontract themselves out to the public. That's why it's so easy. There's construction stores that are selling all the materials. It's not like you're trying to build a computer where you got to find some specialist who doesn't subcontract himself out to you. You got to try and buy parts that aren't readily available to the public. Everything's set up for DIY people. There's already owner, builder, project manager, people that build their own residential home. We have a legal way to do that, and they hire the contractors to build their home. So everything's already set up. You just kind of need to get the right information, like this course, to get you on your way. So these are the information packs we have. We give them to the tradespeople. Now, all the tradespeople that are in your local area, that have all the skills needed to build your tiny house, all the skills. They just need a bit more knowledge to bridge that gap from the residential industry to the tiny house industry. That's all. That's what they need. But they do need it, and I recommend that they get it, because otherwise they're going to have a learning curve on your house where you don't really want them to have a learning curve on your house. You want them to know what they're doing. So we give them information packs. That automatically takes so much load off your shoulders. They already know, oh, this is what we got to do. Sweet. But the main guy, the main person is your carpenter. He's the star of the show. He does 90% of building this tiny home. And he can also manage the other trades like the electrician and plumber. He can say when they need to come in. If the plumber's got any questions, the carpenter can answer for them. So really, the way I've set this course up is find a good carpenter, one that's skilled and you get along with, and everything's going to be a breeze, really. He already manages his own little jobs, a subcontracting carpenter, that is. You know, he's normally doing decks and renovations, and he's got to order materials and working with plumbers and electricians. It's totally just his bread and butter. So if you find a good carpenter, you're going to give him the information pack. He does 90% of the work. He's got all that information. It's going to make this process so much easier for you, and you're still going to save all that money. Okay, that's it. We've gotten through all the content at least. So that's Uber Tiny School, everything you need to DIY your tiny house. It's online school that we have, completely 100% online, that we have there with support forum, step-by-step instructions, everything you need to build your very own tiny house. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to explain a little bit about the course and what I can offer you. So the course here is something that I've made over 2 years. It took me a lot of work. I was building houses, and then I was going home. I learned how to edit videos. I put everything together. It took me, and I was doing that all in my spare time when I'd come home after a hard day's work. So it was a lot of work. I'll be honest, it was more work than I expected. But I have this thing where I really want to do a job, and I didn't want to do anything half-assed. So it's been a lot of work. So obviously I have to charge you something for this course. I can't give it away for free. It's been a lot of effort, blood, sweat, and tears put into it. Although I do make it very affordable. So I'm going to make you guys an offer now to join this school. So if you're thinking, okay, this is not for me, I've seen enough, now might be the time you want to leave. I thank you for coming this far. I hope you enjoyed it. And thanks you. I'll see you guys around, maybe through my social media channels or elsewhere. And for you that think this might be something you're interested in, stick around now because I'm going to offer you some really good deals to join the school. Firstly, let's look at some of our other clients that have done this school and then built their own tiny houses. So this is Eduardo. He actually made a little business called Casa Tiny Homes, and he really enjoyed the content of the school. This is what he had to say about it. And this is his homes here. So he's kind of developed his own style of building, which I very much encourage. You don't have to build like I build. I'm teaching primarily the principles of building. You can use them principles to come up with whatever style you like. This is Jim and Ali, and this is their very first tiny home. And that's what he had to say. Was really happy with it. Look, pretty great. What's really happening is just that the bar of tiny houses, the standard is getting so high for their first tiny houses straight off the bat. And that's what we really like to see. And that's what happens by doing a course like this. You really save the cost of the course very quickly. This is Jared. This is what he had to say about the course. So he was already a carpenter that wanted to build his own tiny home. So he already had a lot of skill, but he didn't have that knowledge. And just to limit his learning curve, he done the course. Oh, and I think I've missed Jared's slide. Yeah, there was a slide of what Jared's build looked like, but we're missing that. So mistakes suck. It's 10 times harder to fix a mistake than it is to do things right the first time. So you want to just get that knowledge like right from the beginning. It's all about forethought building. So if you just get the right forethought, you get the right system in place, you're not going to make any big mistakes, because fixing a mistake is so much harder than it was to just put in the effort. It's a bit of effort to do this course, get the information right, but it's a lot easier than if you make a big mistake and you've got to fix it. And it's going to cost you a lot of money too to fix a mistake. So again, you're going to save 30 to 50% off the cost of your building by doing a course like this. So it pays for itself pretty quickly. So again, the average house here in Australia, that is $150,000 Australian dollar. 30 to 50% of that, or 50% is up to $75,000 you can save, up to $50,000, 50 to 75,000. So it's a lot of money that you can save by DIYing it yourself. So a course like this, it's nothing. Even the materials that we show you how to get them at trade price, that would pay for this course 10 times over. So it's worth its weight in gold. So included in Uber Tiny School is detailed lessons of each step of the build, free entry to our support community. We have a support community within the online program where you can ask questions if you're getting stuck anywhere along the way, and you get lifetime access and updated content. So our courses on Uber Tiny School, they don't all come together in one by joining it. You get timber and steel frame course, that's one. SIP panel frame course, that's a separate course. And then our project manager course, that's another separate one there as well. So 3 different courses that you can join in Uber Tiny School. So I had a little look, like how do you price something like this? So I looked at some other online courses that they had, or carpenter type courses. That's probably the one that's most relevant. It'd be to do a carpentry course on how to build residential homes. And, the tuition fees vary from like $37,000, $500 up to $12,000. All different sorts of courses available with all big price ranges. This one is $13,000 from my skills course. We're not going to charge you anything like that. None of this $30,000, none of this $20,000, none of this $10,000. We're going to make this super affordable for you guys, so it's a no-brainer to join this school. I had previously charged $9.99 US. So that's what our school's been available for the last 2 or 3 years, and that all of our customers have joined and built their own tiny houses. With that, you get free tiny house plan valued at $100 and a free 1-hour consult with myself valued at $200. So if you get stuck anywhere along the way, you get a free consult from me. You can just email me, let me know where you're at, and we can talk on maybe WhatsApp if you're overseas, or just on the phone if you're here in Australia. But I have a special fast action offer. So any one of you guys that want to join the school now, I've dropped the price quite substantially to $375 Australian. I mean US, sorry, $375 US, which is about $550 at the moment. I think it's trading Australian. Put everything in US, I should say, for all my Australian people out there, because US is the global currency. This course is for people worldwide. And I get a lot more emails asking me, how much is it in US dollars if I don't put it in US dollars? So I just put everything in US dollars, and then you got to convert it from there. That's why I do it, though, because I know some of my Australian friends kind of get a bit annoyed. Why is it in US dollars? But that's why. And the owner builder course is $250 US. So we got two. The SIP panel and the timber and steel frame courses are $375 each, and the owner builder course is $250 US, and it has lifetime access as well. My guarantee to you is that after 30 days of purchasing this course and going over the content, if you're not happy, just email me within 24 hours. You get a refund. I'll pull the course from you. You no longer have access to the course. No questions asked. I know this course works. I know it is great content. I put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into this. So I have absolutely no hesitation offering you this guarantee. If it's not for you, you'll get a refund. No worries at all. I will say this course is not for commercial use in Australia. Now, what all I mean by that is I'm not trying to... I have a building course and I've put all my knowledge into this. So I'm not trying to help other people start their businesses now. This is for people wanting to DIY their own tiny home. So if you want to DIY your own tiny home, I'll give you all the information you need and help you. If you want to start your own tiny house business outside of Australia, I'm going to help you. If you want to start a tiny house business in Australia, this course is not for you. I'm not trying to create more competition for myself, but I am helping all those people out there that want to DIY their own tiny house in Australia. All right. So that's it. The cart is now open. You will now be able to click on buy, and you should be able to go to a sales page to buy this course. Depending where you're seeing this video, though, you might be seeing this video on a different sales page that you can simply just exit this video and go and buy the course by clicking on another button. But if you're seeing this in a webinar platform, you may be able to go into the cart and purchase it. So let me just start offer. Okay, so you should now be able to see in one of the offer buttons that you can go down there and purchase the school from there. So any questions that you guys have, please email them to me at hello@ubertinyhomes.com.au, and I will promptly get back to you. So I hope you really enjoyed this content in this course. I hope to see you guys inside the school and help you DIY your most amazing tiny home. And for all you guys that come along but this course isn't for you, I hope you enjoyed the content, and all the best. I really hope you enjoyed. That's it for me. Thanks, guys.